I'm Annabelle Dickson. I'm a tech reporter for Politico in London, and I'm also the author of London Playbook. I'd just like to remind you to complete your evaluation forms, which you should have, to let us know how we got on. And to also announce that this session is being live streamed and recorded, just so you know you're on the record. Now, we heard last night about the national strategies for artificial intelligence, but it's also something that the European Union is also giving a great deal of thought to, as lawmakers have to judge how to balance promoting innovation with regulation. And it's a pleasure to welcome Věra Jourová, the Justice, Consumer, Gender Equalities Commissioner, to the stage this afternoon. The Commission has been at the forefront of the implementation of GDPR, is playing a part in presenting ethical guidelines on artificial intelligence, which will be finalised this year, and insists that artificial intelligence should be done the European way rather than relying on unscrupulous methods. Something I hope we can talk more about today. So, Commissioner, please come onto the stage. Just before we start, I'd like to remind you we've got a poll going. Should there be global governance mechanism for AI? And you've got 4 options there. So do please take part in our poll. So thank you very much for joining us for this discussion this afternoon.
Hello, thank you for inviting me.
I wanted to start with something one of our guests last night said, Dame Wendy Hall. She suggested that maybe in Europe there was too much focus on ethics, and we should be actually focusing more on building AI in Europe. I'd just be interested, I know you're very keen to talk about ethics, but interested to hear what you make of that.
I think there is, first of all, the focus on people in Europe. If you want ethics, maybe you find this important that with artificial intelligence, and I will use a little bit provocative slogan, it should not be win-win. The people should keep winning. Yeah. And if we live in a world of uncertainties, and one thing is pretty certain, that artificial intelligence will change the way we live and work. And we have in our hands the solution that it will be changed for the better for the people. It's a pretty trivial concept, but I think that it's our duty and our obligation to work in that direction. And in this effort to come with a solution which will be good for the people, ethics is inevitably a very important part.
But do you feel there's enough focus on promoting people building AI? I mean, a lot of the discussion is talk about ethics, but what about policies to help people actually create this technology?
I think that we should start with agreeing in a wide platform of decision makers on some basic principles. I said before, it's not very original, but people first, yes? So we should build this system in Europe where we will insist on having the full respect to the rights of individuals. And you said at the beginning that I'm responsible for the application of GDPR. Mm-hmm. This is one of the principles which we have very strongly embedded in our system, that we have the respect for the protection of privacy of every individual. Another principle would be, please no copy-paste of imperfect reality into artificial intelligence, because we don't want to transfer the biases and some deformations which we have in real life into the world of AI. We have a chance to do this right, to get rid of this, and to do this artificial intelligence system bias-proof or fair for everybody. So I think that this is the principle we should follow. Another principle which I call no black box, please. We should understand what's happening inside the system. Mm-hmm. speaking about the algorithms, we should be quite insistent to see that the algorithm is created or designed in the way that there is no discrimination, that there is the fair level playing field for everybody, and that in case we have some doubts, we have the chance to understand how the algorithm works.
Mm-hmm.
Then I put it down here. Yes, another principle, it is again the reference to the data protection. I want to keep myself. So I want to have, as an individual, things under control. The artificial intelligence, the robots should not start ruling my life. If there are decisions made by the artificial intelligence, I should know how the decision was made, and I should have the autonomous last touch on it, especially in the situations when the decision of AI has the serious consequence on my life. So these are the principles which I'd like to see embedded into how we build AI. And I don't think that these principles are something which should hinder innovation, which should deprive the businesses to do what they want to do in this field. But I will always say that we must not lose sight from these basic principles.
And you talk about this black box. What do developers need to disclose? And have you seen an example of someone who's doing explainability well, who's a sort of example of best practice for what you're trying to achieve?
It's difficult to say at this stage. I only want to tell you that where I would like to see it in different sorts of services, especially, for instance, the banking sector. Mm-hmm. Here I have some insights through my consumers policy agenda. I want the system to be transparent. Transparency is the key word here. And if somebody will be rejected when applying for the loan, it must be based on his ability to pay back, not on who he is or she is. So these are in the world of services, I like to see these best practices. Of course, in health sector, in social work, these are the sensitive sectors where we need full transparency to be sure that the artificial intelligence doesn't work only for some. Yeah. Because we live in the world where a big part of our society feels some kind of unfairness and also uncertainty, also due to this fast technological development. And we should not increase this by making the mistake of having the AI not transparent, developing AI not transparent in the EU.
We had a poll earlier today which suggested, we asked the people here who they thought was going to be leading the world in AI in 10 years, and 49% said China and 39% said the US. Does this matter?
In global scope, this is how it is now, because we, of course, have many surveys which show they are at the front row, forefront. But what I see in China, there is unscrupulous harvesting of data, of private data of people, which is the driver, which is the petrol of the system. In the US, it's driven by the business, nothing against business. I don't want to start speaking about some cyber communism. This is far from what I would like to see. But this big business also doesn't pay too much attention to the protection of privacy of people. And here you see the distinction between the US and Chinese system and the European system, where, as I said, already through GDPR, we set this high standard, and we want to continue to do so.
So we're coming to the end of your term, and wanted to get your thoughts on what the next Commission should be doing on artificial intelligence. What do you think their priorities should be?
What should be?
What should the priorities of the next Commission be?
I will start speaking about the method. I wouldn't like to see in the next Commission somebody who knows everything, without asking the people who know something. And this is the method we are using now. I'm sure that is also Jirki's case. We are in permanent contact with the IT big tech players, with the research sphere, with the decision makers in the member states, and it will require some more common debate about how to do this right in the EU, how to keep these principles which I spoke about before, and how, if to regulate, how to do it only to the extent which is proportionate and necessary. Because the Commission, according to many people, it's a legislative machine. I would like to see carefulness and very responsible approach so that not to overshoot by some future regulation. For me, regulation in the world of technologies is to look properly into the systems and to filter out the risks which necessarily have to be addressed by the legislation, and then to do it, not vice versa.
And what role would you like to play in shaping the next Commission's approach to AI?
If I am in the next Commission, I will contribute to this method of let's ask first and let's come with smart decisions, proportionate decisions. If I will be out of the Commission, I will be shouting like a lion if the new Commission will be coming with some remedies of some possible problems which will go beyond what's necessary. I am the friend of proportionate legislation.
And do you see a role for a commissioner who's devoted to artificial intelligence? And would you like to see yourself in that role?
Oh, it's tempting, because I said at the beginning that for sure AI will change the way we live and work. So this person, if there will be a devoted commissioner, will have a lot of things on the plate. And not only these ethical and societal aspects, but also the aspects which relate to different sectors. Just imagine how broad this is going to be, that it will affect many different sectors and many different aspects of lives of people. So there should be proper potential or proper capacity devoted for digitalization, robotization, and AI in the next Commission, which will be able to capture all these factors. And it will be, if there will be such a person, it will be one of the strongest commissioners in the new college.
Interesting. There seems to be
if I see myself in it.
Yeah, let's hear the $100 million question.
Yes, I like it.
So there seems to be a sort of public appetite, certainly in the UK, which is an area that I cover a lot, to be seen to regulate tech, to clamp down on the tech giants. How much pressure do you think there'll be in the upcoming European elections for politicians to make promises about this? And do you think they should be talking about this and making promises on this?
I think there will be several prominent topics in the pre-election debate. We want to be rich, so prosperity, where the input of technologies will be absolutely crucial, so it will be in it. We want to be more secure. We want to remain alive. I don't want to make you paranoid here. But again, in security, technologies will play a hell of an important role. We want to be globally competitive. Again, the same story. So, of course, this question of how to use the technologies and promote and support the technologies, including AI in the EU, it will be one of the leading topics in the elections. I'm sure about that.
I'm afraid that I can't avoid Brexit. I'm sorry about that.
I'd like to avoid Brexit.
So the UK is leaving in just over a week, as things currently stand. As yet, no deal agreed by the UK Parliament. Will that, if if the UK leaves with no deal, will that have an impact on the relationship that it will have with the European Union when it comes to artificial intelligence?
We will have to learn how to live with it, because no deal scenario, it is still something I cannot imagine how it will work and how big the damage will be. First of all, the damage caused to the people living there and here. And I think that we should mobilize all political responsibility. We have to not to let this happen. In case there is a deal scenario which would give us more time and better chance to agree on the future, I would like to see strategic relationship between the EU and the UK. There will be the space for agreeing on the ways for enhanced cooperation with UK on these fields, which I mentioned before. Prosperity, security, we should remain strong partners and reliable partners, but also in this field of artificial intelligence. I cannot figure out now how far it could go. You know, for instance, we want to create a European pool for data, which is necessary for the research in AI. There will be question mark whether it could be shared with the UK or not. I cannot predict anything now, but there will be these practical matters, even technical matters to be solved, but everything which will be decided will have to be based on the mutual trust. And this is something which we should try from the bottom of our powers and hearts to maintain the mutual trust. So we will see if the no deal scenario will come. Of course, I know very well the contingency plan we had to develop for this case. There is nothing about the cooperation in this field. That's why I say if we give it a chance to have the transition period, we will be able to create some kind of cooperation in this field. And
another big area that comes in your portfolio is the flow of data as well. In the event of no deal, how quickly do you think an adequacy ruling could be made?
I will try to do everything possible still within my mandate. Because for me, this adequacy, mutual recognition of the protection of data, which we have now with Japan, for instance, where we recognize that in Japan there is essentially equivalent protection of private data, which enables us to transfer the data there. So the first thing is to see such adequacy in UK. And UK is implementing in full the GDPR. This is very, very strong condition or precondition for good start of adequacy talks. How quickly it will depend on many factors, but for me, this free data flow, it's such an important condition for trade cooperation that I don't want to keep the barrier there by not having the legal certainty for data flows. Data flows, free data flows are important, or I will say differently, for the trade and for the cooperation in the field of services. 40% of the volume of exchange of services is dependent on free flow of data. And UK, if we do this well, and if we have UK as the strategic partner in the field of business, it will be important that we have the free flow of data. So I take this from this practical point of view, and in my capacity of the commissioner responsible for protection of data, if the political atmosphere will be favorable, I will do my best to go as far as I can within my mandate. I cannot promise that the adequacy decision will be taken still in my mandate, but I will be preparing the ground for it.
What about for, well, I think lots of the larger businesses have put in contingencies, you know, they've used alternative legal mechanisms, but there's a lot of small businesses, both in the UK and Europe, who probably assumed that the politicians would sort out Brexit and haven't made any preparations. What assurances can you give them that they're not going to be, you know, the day after a no-deal Brexit, that the regulators aren't going to go after them?
I think our contingency plan has been published, so the people are aware of it. We are going to communicate for such case the basic information because that's the information which is existentially important for the citizens and for the businesses. And we will hope that they will be able to cope with the new situation. But it's I will say, very, very difficult situation for everybody now.
Yeah. Going back to the explainability of algorithms, who do you see as the police of this? Who's going to make those judgments about whether or not a company's explained an algorithm properly or explained their decision?
First of all, it's the responsibility of the company to do this right. So to construct the algorithm in the way which will work for the benefit not only for the service and business, but also for the benefit of for the consumers. As I said before, no bias, no differences in the access to services and so on. And so, first of all, it's on the company to decide on the right construction of it. But as I said also before, we need to have the possibility, in case of doubt, that the people can complain that they are victims of some unfair treatment. And here, our advice is to use the traditional channels. We have the channels for complaining, not against artificial intelligence, but or the system, the algorithm, but we have the possibility to lodge complaints and to get the remedy. That's why I say that it's very important to have guarantee that in case of the complaint, the company will inform about how the algorithm was constructed.
We're running very short on time, so I just wanted to take one question from the audience, which was, is the Commission considering how existing sector-specific regulations cover the different applications of AI, or is regulating AI across the board inevitable?
I think that we have a good screening of what's regulated where. So there are many sectors which have regulation at the level of the member states. And there are some principles which are regulated on the level of the EU, typically data protection. So we have to look into the national systems, and that's why I am glad that we have the more and more member states which have the national strategy, which always or should contain not only the description of how they want to promote and support the AI development, but also how the regulatory framework will enable to do that. And when I speak to the representatives of the member states, I say the Commission will help by smart regulation. At this moment, it's no regulation, which is also smart, isn't it? But I always say to the member states, make sure you don't have the sectoral legislative barriers in your system. Typically, procurement procedures. For some member states, it's still very difficult to come with the projects based on PPP principle, public-private partnership. And we are inviting now for this concept because we want to see the combination of public and private money in the research and developing business in AI. And I see in some member states still the barriers that the procurement laws do not differentiate between the contractor and partner. So just one concrete example of where I see the possible future limits, which could surprisingly hinder the development in the member states. I don't know if I replied the question.
I'm afraid we're running out of time, so just one final question. We had this awful attack in New Zealand this week, where the gunman filmed the attack and streamed it directly onto the internet. Following the attack, in the UK, the Home Secretary said tech companies should do more to clean up their platforms or they'll face the full force of the law. Do you agree with him on that?
I read this declaration. I think he said something, it's time to be responsible and enough is enough. I can sign it. And this is exactly what we speak about when we meet the platforms. I just came here from a meeting with Facebook and Google and Twitter. We continuously speak about how to create the space of platforms which will be free of illegal content. And this is obviously this case. This is terrorism. This is something which is prohibited to be spread. That's why we need them to act quickly. Of course, and this is not, I'm not an advocate of Facebook, but we have to bear in mind the technological and human and time limits. And Facebook has informed us that they use the technologies to detect as early as possible these cases. But when somebody is just screening the shooting in real life, this is a new phenomenon which will have to be addressed, and they have to work more on addressing this potential risk, because this is outrageous case. And what else can I say to it? Yes, we want to see more responsibility and quicker action, and I receive again and again the commitments from the platforms that they are working in the direction.
Something I'm sure that the next Commission will continue to be occupied by. Thank you very much, Commissioner, for your time and fascinating insights. I'd like to invite... Oh,
yes, thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.